Hello, this is a short taster of a show inspired by a magnificent tasting that I did of wall-to-wall 100-point wines, featuring no fewer than 11 of these perfect scoring bottles, from top Burgundy to Bordeaux, Brunello, Bulgari, and that's just the bees.
Maybe Lucky Boy or similar should be added. So the full-length episode is now live for our Wine Blast Plus subscribers, and this is a short teaser. It's important to stress from the outset, this isn't a gloating, bottle-stroking kind of episode. It's possibly just the opposite, because this is a show where we get stuck into scores and how they can miss the point.
We're asking what 100 points even means these days. How valid are scores, which seem to be everywhere in wine, as endless tasting notes and numbers are churned out on a seemingly constant basis. What are the pros and cons? Is such wine scoring a concept that has had its time and is ripe for a reset, starting with the 100-point system itself?
And we're putting not only scores under the spotlight, but also these supposedly perfect wines going back 40 years, from Cristal 2008 to Pichon Lalande 2016, Ornellaia 2013, Diamond Creek Volcanic Hill 2013, and Marques de Morieta Castillo, Ygay, Blanco 1986. Can they live up to the almost impossible expectations that a 100-point score inevitably confers?
And in case you're wondering about pots calling kettles black here, we also take a pretty unflinching look at ourselves in the mirror. We've been known to score wines, sometimes even by way of consensus.
Occasionally.
Are we guilty of perpetuating an inherently flawed system? How does a marriage even survive that process? We also weigh up the storytelling approach versus the scoring strategy. Waste of life is mentioned, as is how and why things need to move on.
And I do have to intervene when you get a bit hot under the collar about Bordeaux En Primeur.
Yes.
But this is not all heavy going. We also touch on the magic of discovery, not entirely serious anti-scoring wine rating scales, and the importance of wines that make you smile, which some of these bottles definitely did.
Proving wine can and does have the power to take the grump out of the man. So if you'd like to listen to this episode in full, sign up to Wine Blast Plus at wineblast.co.uk. We can't offer 100-point wines by way of a signing on bonus, but we can offer an episode about 100-point wines, which hopefully will also provide food for thought.
We'll leave you now with a couple of short clips from the programme. Enjoy. So those of you who caught our interview with Hugh Johnson, the doyen of wine writers, will remember him telling the story of how back in the late 70s, his New York publisher showed him a new wine book by a then little-known writer with lots of tasting notes, and Hugh thought it was great, but he was a bit confused and had to ask why there were lots of numbers next to each wine. Scores, came the answer. The book, of course, was written by one Robert Parker.
Uncle Bob himself. Parker went on to become one of the most prominent wine critics of his era, famously using the 100-point scale, modelled on the American high school marking system. Apparently, we wouldn't know much about that, but there you go, which basically scores things, as far as I understand, from 50 to 100. But it's essentially a 100-point scale because half marks are allowed. And he would use this rating system to score and rank wines, thousands and thousands of them.
Now, Parker almost certainly wasn't the first to rate wines numerically, but his system did become the most widely adopted. These Parker points were viewed as a convenient shortcut to a wine's quality. You didn't need any wine expertise to understand them. You didn't even need to speak English to get the message. It was a universal wine language of sorts.
So that's one of the main arguments advanced in favour of scores, that they help make wine accessible to newcomers, and that they've helped sort of internationalise the world of wine, particularly fine wine.
And there's also the suggestion that scores can help exciting new producers get recognised faster than they did in the past, and that they help raise standards among producers more generally.
Yeah, and at the MMD tasting, just thinking our fellow master of wine, the lovely Mark Bingley, a founding director of the company, said specifically of 100-point wines that it's a point of excitement, you know, because these wines can't just be good, they have to be the best. They're the kind of wines that make you have to have another glass, he said. The kind of wines that make you smile from the first moment you smell them.
Now I can relate to that.
there's a temptation in wine to think everyone is hanging on your every word and score.
Are they not?
Yeah. You know what I mean, though? You see so much of the stuff. And I think passing judgment on wines, I don't know, if that's the main thing, it's possibly just a bit of a waste of life in our view, maybe. Is that too harsh?
Well, each to their own. But individual tasting notes and scores definitely have a sell-by date.
Yeah.
They're inevitably limited in their appeal, given how personal they are. I mean, plus they can end up being a bit boring, both to read and to write, to be very honest.
That says a lot, exactly.
I mean, I think we're much more interested in telling stories, aren't we? In talking to people, in exploring how and why a wine is as it is. I mean, particularly if there's something unique or intriguing or different about it, rather than just issuing a pronouncement. I mean, both can be valid things to do, but I know which I prefer to do.
So we're not against scores in principle. They can serve a purpose, but their importance and significance has probably been overblown in the last few decades. Would we agree on that?
Yeah.
Maybe it's time for a reset.
Okay, so we've battered around the theory of scores a bit and been a little bit catty in the process. But what about us? We score wines.
Yes, we do.
We've even given the odd perfect score. So are we just as guilty as everyone else of perpetuating a fallible, imperfect system?
It's a fair cop. Quite like imperfect, fallible things in general rule. But anyway, you're quite right.
This sounds like a 100-point wine, right?
Look, I mean, I wasn't quite.
Surely.
Don't look at me like that. I wasn't quite at 100 points.
Where were you?
I wasn't far off. I
99.999.
wasn't far off exactly. This was definitely one of the wines at the tasting. And would I begrudge someone giving it perfect marks? If you were sat next to me and you gave that, no, I would not. I would not. It was a sensational wine. But one thing I would say here is, this is a wine I think with a long, long future ahead of it. So why rush into 100 points now?
Now, that's a really interesting point. We touched on this, didn't we, when we talked about Bordeaux En Primeurs. But is there a risk that critics are too eager to score young wines very highly, when actually we should be patient and let them mature a bit before we can be sure how exactly they're evolving and what their real quality is?
I think so. I'm not sure if it's a controversial opinion, but
I'm sure it is.
I think
from both of us.
I don't know. I just think rushing to champion nascent fine wines is a fool's game.
God, so hang on a minute. We're 9 wines in, and I think I've counted 2, possibly 3 wines that you've been really impressed with.
I am such a grump.
You are. You really are.
Thank you. I appreciate that from my wife. No, really, I am. I can. This is me in critical mode, I suppose. But anyway, let's not get ahead of ourselves. Got 2 left.
Got more to come.
And we did finish with 2 spectacular wines.
Well, I'm very pleased to hear it.
So we're back on the up here. We're on the upward gradient. I'm not going to finish this episode grumpy, even if I am midway through. I think it's a wine you might have to beg or steal. Or something like that.
Stay legal, people. But nice to end on a high note, no?
I know. So there we go. If you want to hear the show in full, all you have to do is subscribe to Wine Blast Plus at wineblast.co.uk or follow the link in your show notes. As a subscriber, you get early access to all episodes and enjoy subscriber-only bonus content like this show, as well as full archive access.
You'll also be supporting the show and benefiting from subscriber-only discounts with the likes of Corravin, Jancis Robinson Glassware and Academy du Vin Library. We'd love it if you joined the gang. In the meantime, thanks for listening and cheers.